Hello! How are we all doing? Let me know. There's so many of you in the chat. First off, Renee. Really? It's over a week. I can't be doing with being ill myself, so deepest sympathies to you. But Renee was first in, so not all bad then. Followed by Kim. You know, I'm sure I need better glasses. I can't see a thing here. I'll have to zoom in. It's the only thing for it. Who else have we got with us? Oh, quite a conversation between Renee and Kim at the beginning there, which I will catch up on later. Hello, Deb. And who else do we have? Peter. Peter's in. Nothing to say, Peter.
You are live.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, I'm just, soon, Peter, honestly. Need pictures of smiling dogs, so start collecting them. Oh, Jonathan's in. Hello, Jonathan. Who else do we have? Carol. Hello, Carol. Were you in today's mastermind? Because you got a mention, but I didn't see you in the chat. But there again, I don't really look at the chat. And we have Graham. Graham is in the house. And Richard. Hello, Richard. Have I missed anybody? Debbie. Debbie, hello. Right, I don't think I've missed anyone. Renee says you shouldn't complain. So many people are in a much worse state. And Peter's heard me. Oh, good. You can hear me then, Peter. Oh, you were there, Carol. No, I didn't see you. But I'm getting confused with Zoom, with that threaded chat thing, because some things seem to fold up. And then I have to make that bigger, and then I can't see who's there. So never mind. I was there, and I was paying total attention. I was. Okay. Oh, hello, Alex. Somebody said hello to Alex, so Alex must be in there, and I nearly missed that. Oh, no. Right, excellent. I've got a running order, but I can't guarantee that's exactly what's going to happen. Right, because I follow the presentation. So the presentation is where it's at, no matter what. My notes, not the same as the presentation, but it's been one of those weeks, hasn't it? So anything could happen. But then that's pretty much true any time, isn't it? So let's get going. So the plan, according to the presentation anyway, is that we've got the week at MacBites headquarters, and then we've got the Affinity 2.1 beta features. Interesting is what I'll say with that. Interesting. Then a request, which is Sunshine in Affinity Designer, which I thought was a nice title for a demo. Then we have some freebies, but actually we've got multiple freebies, because we're then going on to working with free templates in Affinity Publisher, which was also a request. In essence, somebody had downloaded a template and it promised it would work in Affinity Publisher, and well, that was the end of that. There are tricks to this, so I will share them. And then in Obsidian, we're going to manage projects with Kanban, because so far everything we've done is just plain text notes. But Obsidian is way more than that. So that is the plan. You need to make sure that you are watching in 1080p, because that's how we're broadcasting. It does weird things with me on mobile, but it's been all right on the desktop this week. It had a moment a few weeks ago where every video was 360 and I kept having to update it, and it was annoying. But they seem to have fixed that. So make sure that you are watching in 1080p. There is also a like button down there near the cog in the right-hand corner. So give that a push while you're there. So last Saturday, it was the food delivery day. Remember? Oh, it was going to be marvellous, only we've got no food in the UK. So you're all right if you want a packet of crisps. Mind you, there was a shortage of crisps a while back, wasn't there? But proper food, no, not good. So if you remember, we just got to the point where the government suggested turnips. I reckon there's a small percentage of the population that would know what to do with a turnip. Mind you, I think the others would have a shrewd idea, but it wouldn't involve cooking it.
Talking of turnips.
Go on.
You know when you go to YouTube and it says, you watch this, you might like this.
Oh, I dread to think what
Do I not like that? Came up.
Well, the Tories managed to get themselves into even more trouble. They're our government, if you are from somewhere else. You're very lucky. So the papers were in a stew over that again, literally. Because she suggested buying turnips, the shops had no turnips. Was it Sainsbury's had a grand idea of selling not tulip, daffodil
Oh,
bulbs.
it's Marks and Spencer's.
Marks and Spencer's. Sorry, I take that back, Sainsbury's. Marks and Spencer's got the grand idea of putting daffodil bulbs in the food aisle. They're poisonous. So that went down really well. So, yeah, it was a good weekend. In fact, Tesco, so poor with their stock control, they must have bought Ladbrokes server, that it was a case of we're not going to be bringing much. To the point, Mike had to dive in and put an Asda order in. I think we'd have been okay. We'd have just done without, wouldn't we? It was Lola. They had no dog treats. This was a crisis. Hence, emergency order to Asda. So, Sunday morning dawned. No, it wasn't the Asda order that was important. Oh, it was the big day. It was Carabao Cup final day. Oh, that is a big day, isn't it? Because they've not won anything since 2017? 2016, yes, it's been a while. Anyway, United were there, as you should know by now. To everybody else, Carabao Cup. To us, Tin Pot. I realised as I was putting this together, that some of you will never have seen the Tin Pot Cup. So, let me educate. That is the Tin Pot Cup. In fact, that is legitimately the Tin Pot Cup. It is the English Football League Cup. And normally when it's sponsored, the sponsor provides a different cup. But they're obviously cheapskates and not doing that. So that is the original. We didn't actually win the original in 92, did we? We won the Rumbelows Cup. So we didn't get that cup. We got a different one, probably in the shape of a TV. Anyway, that was what was happening on Sunday. And happy to report it all went swimmingly well. So I had a happy boy next to me. Do you know, I don't think I could name half those players. And the one at the front that's got the cup with Maguire is the spit image of Gio from Strictly. And that's me done with that lot. Oh, and the keeper. I know the keeper. And Rashford's on there somewhere, isn't he? Is he hiding behind somebody else?
I don't know.
Because I don't actually see him. But anyway, it could not ever surpass when we won it for the first time in 1992. That was the day Mike and I started going out. Not only did we come home with the cup, we came home with each other. Oh, it was brilliant. So nothing will ever beat that. Oh, that cup there, that does actually look a little bit like the Tin Pot, but without the plinth. Maybe somebody stole the plinth. Oh, there's the plinth at the other end. The plinth's on the right-hand side, so it obviously fell to pieces, as usually happens. Not even joking. Was it 77? Somebody dropped it and it went under the bus and they drove over it and it needed to go in for repairs. Oh, it was brilliant. Anyway, the celebrations lasted long into the night, which was when, Asta, would you? We'd carefully arranged this around the match, around the dog's walk, and around us having dinner. They were due 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. How far could they go wrong? You are probably thinking, like we were, that they would be delivering in a van. An Asda van. But apparently not. It was more like a TARDIS and they didn't seem to know when they were coming or going. So 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock became, during the match, 6:45 to 9:30. That's dinner time. Then, as we were contemplating, well, it's all right, we'll move dinner, they decided to move the delivery. Then they decided to move it again. Eventually, they rocked up at 10 to 9, so they were only 10 minutes early. So why start mithering us 3 hours before? I have no idea. Apart from to make eating a perilous ordeal, which was pretty much what it was, wasn't it? It's like, OK, the dinner's on the table, get it eaten, because they could be knocking on the door. But there was good news. They brought the dog's treats, so all was well. She was less than pleased, however. Something arrived, but she's a big dog, isn't she? And she likes big treats. And they sent medium. So there were bad woofs said. She wasn't pleased until she realised if she made enough of a stink about it, she could possibly get 2 instead of 1. And that would be better than 1 big one. She's a very clever bear, isn't she? Which took us on to Monday. It was lights, camera, action on Monday because we were doing the planner pages for student session. That became a fiasco. Afterwards, it told me that 3,500 people had viewed it. Now, this is from a third-party app. It then dropped to 850. But the stats in YouTube, where they do tell you how many have viewed it, but it's more in terms of revenue and stuff, and that was off the scale, and yet it was still dropping in this other thing. So I have no idea what's going on there, but if you were with us, I hope you enjoyed it. Because it finished rather late, it didn't actually start till 9, did it? One of my favourite TV programmes, Series 5 was starting, and I missed it. So it got to midnight, which was Tuesday, and I thought I'll go get the first episode of this thing and I'll watch it, because I don't want to go on social and get any spoilers. If you're wondering what the show was, it's called Unforgotten. So I goes up there to watch this one episode, no adverts, so it should have been about 42 minutes, to find the whole of season 5 was available. Well, there was only one thing for it. I pulled an all-nighter and indulged myself with the entirety of season 5. It was fabulous. No spoilers, but it was fabulous. So if you can watch it, watch it. By Wednesday, I was a bit on the tired side, but it was another big day. Only 3 days after the Tin Pot. This one isn't the Tin Pot, is it? This is the proper cup. This is the FA Cup. This is far more important than the Tin Pot. And to be honest, they were a little bit jaded after the Tin Pot. The final score of 3-1 was generous, wasn't it? Very flattering, because they went one down for quite some time. Luckily, West Ham managed to score for us, because we weren't doing a very good job of it at that point. But finally, we went one up, because we were looking, we were staring down the barrel of extra time and penalties, by which time the buses would have gone and it'd be past your bedtime, wouldn't it? But luckily, it was scored in the last minute, and then 5 minutes into injury time. So the score was flattering in the extreme, don't believe it. The match was dire. The first half was absolutely awful. And the second half, I think the entertainment started with the VAR decisions, didn't it?
It did.
Didn't one go our way and then the other one didn't? Oh, it was not a good match, no. So Thursday, I decided I deserved a treat. This was when the bad words started. I decided to deep dive the beta versions, 2.1 of the Affinity apps. What they said and what was actually in there, nothing like each other. But I will explain, because we've got a bit on that today, which takes us to today and where we are now. So I hope you've all had a good week. Renee needs to rest, obviously. So let's have a look at those beta versions and the features and all of the rest of it. So about 3 weeks ago, I explained that anybody who owns the apps can join the beta program. So that's where you need to go. There are a couple of caveats on it. You are only entitled to try the beta versions of apps that you actually own. So if you own Designer and Publisher but not Photo, you wouldn't be able to try the beta of Photo. And it's also on the platforms that you own, which isn't an issue if you've got a universal license. So that's the summary of all of this on here, that you can download it. You need to know what licensing you've got. You need to know what platforms you've got. And again, then give them some feedback. I could be a while with that. But that is all the information. It's available at that link that was there before. So let's go and have a look at a few of the features. Not all of them, but they put out a video and I thought, right, well, these 5 look interesting. Yes. So Affinity Designer Beta 2, let's get that open. Who has tried it? Who has joined up for the beta and given it a try? And who has been following along?
Renee doesn't want to risk it, which is very unlike Renee, isn't it?
It is. You usually dive in. It must be the COVID making him cautious. There is a bit of an issue with it, I'll be honest. So Renee's not ludicrous in his decision. If you start working, or if you start working from new, which is what I'm going to do here in the beta version, there is a chance that you will not be able to open it in the older versions. So should the beta run out or whatever, you could find yourself having a problem. So I obviously only did this just to try the features. I just wanted to try the new features. So what have I got here? Designer, right. I don't particularly need any margins then, do I? I don't know why I did it like this, but never mind. We'll make it A4 because we can. Doesn't really matter. Nothing new in here particularly, but I'm just getting a blank file so we can start work on it. Right, the first thing it said thrilled me. Oh, I do like to be a woman that's thrilled. Right, let's imagine that we've put some shapes on here. So let's actually go do it and put some shapes on here. Right, I'm going to make them different colours. Doesn't matter precisely what you do with this.
Question.
Really, good grief, that was fast.
Are the betas separate installs from the originals?
Yes, they are. You can have installed version 1, version 2, and the beta all together. The only caveat with that you would have to think about is if you've got application palettes, they would only be in the version you have installed them in, and that would hold good for symbols and assets and all of the rest of it. But they do separately exist, so you can play along with them and you don't have any problems whatsoever with anything overwriting anything else. Do we have any other questions, or is that it?
No, that's it for the moment.
Okay, so I've got my 3 things on there. Right, the rationale for this is I'm sure we all work with lots of different elements on a canvas, be it in Designer or Publisher or Photo. And we have a lot of stuff in the layers panel over here. So the first thing was, and I mentioned this to Mike and he said, oh, that's exactly how I do it. Let's say we want to put a name in for this. We would double click actually where the name would be. And at the moment it's saying rectangle, and we can type a name in. Now, I wouldn't put red rectangle because I might change the colour of it, but I would describe it in terms of what its function is. So is it the background? Is it a designer element? Whatever it is. For this, I am just going to put item 1. That'll do. Right, you can see the difference in terms of if the name of the layer is a kind of brown colour, difficult to read, then it's not being given a name. It's just taking the name from what it was when it was put on the canvas. If it's white, then you have named it. The problem with this is I don't like having to go find it and then go over here and then start naming things. Now, for 3 things, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. But if we were to take this and put lots of elements in, all of a sudden, irrespective of what colour they are and where they're placed and all the rest of it, now it's a big naming job. So let's be honest, put it in the chat. How many of you just don't bother? I do bother. Maybe not to the level. If these were like petals on a flower, I would group them together and then name the group. I wouldn't put petal 1 and petal 2, not that bad, but something to think about. Right, so what they promised as I'm watching this video was, oh, it's grand now. All you need to do is select a layer and then use a shortcut key. And the shortcut key was Command Shift and R. I am Command Shifting and R'ing, listen. Thud, thud, thud. Nothing. And I thought, I wound it back, watched the video again. I thought, just a minute, I'm not doing it. What should happen is it gives you a shortcut key to rename it, which should be great. Didn't work at all. So I headed off to investigate. So up in the preferences, you have shortcuts as an option. So I thought, what gives? First thing is you've got to find it. And how it's organised is by the persona. So Designer, Pixel or Export. And I'm in Designer. And then this is the first menu, which is the title of it, which is Affinity Designer 2 Beta. It's obviously in the Layers menu. So into the Layers menu, down to the bottom, started looking for it. There is Rename Layer. And there is the shortcut key. I thought, that's fabulous. You've just told me that you've made a shortcut key and it's not there. So I put it in myself. Talk about a do-it-yourself job. Command Shift R. And then closed it. This is selected, and it's selected because I've selected it in here. And now Command Shift and R brings up the Rename Layer dialog box. Why tell us that it does it automatically when it clearly doesn't? I don't know. Hence the bad words. I had a headache and I wasn't in any mood for any messing. So don't upset a woman of a certain age. So in there, it tells you that it's a rounded rectangle to get going with. But if we say this is our navigation and press enter, I don't have to go over there and click it. That's basically it. But, it's worth it. It's worth it. And also from the layer, you've got rename layer. Now you can see there's a shortcut key, but before I manually set that, there was no shortcut key and it was not displaying in there either. So I don't know why they fiddled around with that, but they have. So there you go. Now, that is important for the next thing. And I tested Mike with this and there was more bad words, wasn't there? Because it said, right, if you use the tab key, you can move from layer to layer and rename them all. I thought, fabulous. So I've got that selected. We know if I Command Shift and R, I can do that. But it said use the tab key, it said. I pressed the tab key and I got exactly what I expected, which is the tab key hides the interface. So if you want a quick look at your artwork without all of the interface getting involved, you press the tab key. So I thought, so you can tab to the next layer. Really, that's not happening. So tab to bring it back. What they actually meant, if they could actually say what they mean, it'd be grand. What they actually meant was, if you double clicked in there to rename it, so navigation, right? Let's put site navigation so it's different. And now press the tab key, you are in a totally different context. You are editing that layer's name. So if you press tab, it goes to the next one down and makes it editable. They didn't actually tell you that though. It turned into quite an adventure. So we'll just put circle 1 in there and tab and circle 2. But what you need not to do is press enter when you're done, because if you do, despite the fact that that is still active, you use the tab key, it hides the interface again. So it'll be fine when you get used to it, but at the beginning it could do with a little bit of clarity as to what is actually going on here. So there's 2 different ways to rename the layers. Who names their layers? Let me know. Let me move this up so I can actually see the chat.
I name the layers.
Do you? All of them?
No, I don't name. No, I don't name the layers. I name the
groups,
the artboards for exporting, don't I?
You do.
I knew I named something.
Oh my. That's because I made you a template.
You did.
And the export doesn't work if you don't name the layers, does it?
No.
Because it would automatically export with an incorrect name.
Yeah.
And then I would shout and things would get messy. So those are the 2 first things. Okay. Right, what was the next one? Oh, this one was actually useful. Right, so what I'm going to do in here is, let's imagine that these yellow things are pretty petals. So I'm going to group those with Command and G. Right. And
Carol names them. Good girl, Carol.
Good girl, Carol. It makes it easy when you come back to it, honestly. Which is to do with our last demo as well. Right, so I've got a group of these in here. Now, what the next one is Alt or Option and drag to duplicate. So obviously up to now, you've been able to duplicate a few ways. You could Command and J, that would duplicate. But what this is going to enable you to do is to hold down Option on the Mac, Control, Alt on Windows, and drag to create a new layer. Why is that better than the existing way? Well, let's imagine that I want these yellow things on the top. If I were to do that, so I'm going to delete one of them. So they're in the middle at the moment, but I want them on the top. Command and J will create a copy of it, but it will put it straight above where it currently is. So it's fractionally faster to hold down the Option key and drag it to where you actually want it. So instead of doing 2 manoeuvres, you're doing 1 manoeuvre. Why that wasn't there since the start, I have no idea, but it's there now. So what I'm going to do in here, so you know what's going on, I'm going to duplicate. So we've got lots of red squares as well. It doesn't matter what they look like on the canvas at all. It's what they look like in here that matters. So I'm going to grab these and I'm going to group those as well. And then I'm going to put these in there. No, don't want to open that one. I want to open that one and put these inside there. I'm going to get the blue one and I'm going to duplicate that a couple of times. Again, what it looks like doesn't matter. It's what it looks like in the layers. And group those. And now I'm going to put that in here. So in this group, we don't need that one anymore. I've got one top level group. Within that, I've got the yellow things, I've got the blue things, and let's make sure that we group the red things. So all of the colours are grouped together. That one isn't in there, so let's pop that inside. So if we collapse the top group, all the groups inside collapse. So, why this is important. If you are working in a standard app, you can expect to be able to expand and contract or expand and collapse with shortcut keys. So I do this all the time in Scrivener. I navigate the binder with standard shortcut keys to expand and collapse, but I've not been able to do that in here. So I can open this top level and then I need to open the level inside and the level inside and so forth, and then close them up again. What they've actually added, if I close that up and I'm working with this top level group, if I hold the Option key down and I click on the expansion triangle, it will open everything inside it. Whether they are nested, sub-nested or nested, 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 it now opens the whole thing up. Which you may think, no, wouldn't really use that, but it's very useful when you do have a lot of things nested. So Option, without the Option key, if I open it, I get the groups at the top level. With the Option key, it opens up everything. So it's still an option for you, if you pardon the pun, but I'm going to love that, because otherwise you've got to drill down and drill down and drill down. And if you've grouped things in a clever way to be able to work with them, you could have to undo, go down 7 different levels. So just having that Option key, I think that is a big improvement. Beyond that, I've left it alone. In terms of these features being available in the other apps, they are, but I have been through all 3 of them, and Designer with this renaming of the layers, the Shift Command and R, is exactly the same in Publisher. Things didn't go well in Photo, where that is already taken, that shortcut key, and it does something entirely different. So I don't really know what they're going to do about that. But if you want the option, but you want it to be on a different shortcut key, you can do that. You can just go into the preferences and do that. They're really nice additions, but they are kind of finessing additions rather than adding something like, oh, let me think, the number one request I hear to produce an eBook from Publisher. It's not that. It's little things. Little quality of life improvements. Adobe call them just do it. And so they will take like 20% of their time and just do it. So it's a just do it thing that they've added. So do you like those or not? Peter says useful for some imported files. Yes, that's one of the issues that I have when you import stuff, because you know how you work, but wherever you get a template from, somebody else will work in it in a totally different way. I mean, some of the stuff I see that I get from the church is interesting, shall we say, and I fix it and send it back. But sometimes you can't resize a graphic because they put it behind the text. And then they'll say, oh, I locked that. And it's not locked, it's just behind a text frame and you can't actually click it and get to it. So they're nice features. They don't feel like a full point update, but who knows? Maybe we'll get nearer that. But that is what we have in there. Kim says it would be nice to have the shortcut keys the same for all 3. Totally agree. There is a shortcut key in Photo and it gets me every time. Command and M. I just want to minimise it. Never on God's green earth am I going to want to add curves with Command and M. But the reason that I leave it alone is if I'm training people, unless they've customised their shortcut keys, I have to stick as far as possible to the defaults. And I do think it would be nice if they were cross-application. A time that was really important to me. I'd bought a new Mac. It could have been the one where I just came home with it that day, if you remember. In fact, it was worse than that. Mike didn't know I'd gone out to buy a new Mac until I tweeted a picture of said new Mac on the back seat of my car. And I said, I've just bought a new Mac. Oh, it's like the iPad that turned up that you didn't know about either. Oh, it's excitement.
Yes,
here.
you do that a lot.
Yes, living with me is such a thrill, isn't it?
Yes, I do that though.
You do actually. So
yes, I've just bought something now.
Really?
Mm.
Oh, is it tech?
No.
Oh,
It's edible.
you found food? Good grief! No, I think it is important. What happened with this Mac was I literally didn't have time to install Final Cut on it. But I had installed the Adobe suite. So I'm sitting there looking at Adobe Premiere thinking this isn't going to end well. I've never used it before in my life at this stage. And I thought, well, if I want new and if I want a layer, and all the shortcut keys were exactly the same as Photoshop. Within 10 minutes, it was like I've been using it for years. So yes, I agree with you, Kim. It is important. I guess you could change them, but then your situation would be like me. I've got 3 different versions of each app installed on this machine, and that's before I get onto my Windows machine. And they would all have to synchronize their shortcuts. Otherwise, they'd be different in the same app, on the same machine, but in different versions of it. It is a right royal pain, but I guess it could be done. Okay. We've got a question. Okay.
Yes, from Joe. Mm-hmm. Are there websites for consolidating shortcuts?
What do you mean by a website for consolidating shortcuts? You can with your shortcuts in here. Let's have a look. Preferences and shortcuts. You can, when you've set them up, save them. So that is a good thing to do. If you've made extensive changes, which I actually haven't made extensive changes, but I would save them. So let's have a look at this one. So I would say save on this because this is my beta version. And I would put it, not in my documents, I would put it in Dropbox. And it would be in application support. And this is Affinity Designer. So I would go into Affinity Designer. And you can see I've already got in here keyboard shortcuts. Those are my Affinity Designer shortcut keys as at 25th of November last year. These, it just says Affinity Shortcut, which is quite bizarre. So I'd probably want it to say the same as that, but I would probably put on the end of it, that this is the beta version. And it would have a date anyway, but I could put a date on it. So if I put that there as beta and then a date, so I've got a date and time shortcut that I can put on it and then save it. And then they are saved and I can load them onto other machines if I need to. So that's why I kind of pre-organise myself. At the stage I'm saving those shortcuts, I don't need them today. I've only just made them. But if I were to put them in my downloads folder or my documents folder, I'm never going to find them when I do need them. So I have a location for each application where I can store them that's centralised. So if I pick up my laptop and go and do something with that, and I think that shortcut key's not working, I will load them in from that central Dropbox location. And it doesn't matter if it's Dropbox or iCloud or wherever.
What Joe means is having one set of shortcuts for all the different apps he uses, like Adobe and I think he said Ink, further up the chat, Ink Draw.
You could,
Corel Draw, Affinity.
You could, as far as you can get them to go. So if we go to the preferences, you can see here, you can make them the Apple defaults or the Serif defaults, or you can make them your defaults. So if these are different in Inkscape and you want them to be the same, then go through and make another set of them, and then you can load them in, and yes, they could be the same. I don't bother doing that. The only time that proved problematic to me was when I was switching from Windows to the Mac. And at this point, we actually looked that up the other day, didn't we? The text editor thing. I bought a Mac on the 8th of April 2006. And we were talking about text editors. And I went to get the license for the last Windows text editor I had. And I'd purchased it on the 28th of May 2006. And I said, whoa, what was I doing buying a Windows app at that stage. And I remembered that I was really struggling to get the text navigation shortcuts correct. That's the only time I've ever had a problem. Beyond that, it doesn't matter to me. If I know I'm in Designer, I'm using the standard Designer shortcut keys. And if I go to InDesign, I'm using the InDesign ones. And my brain kind of switches. As I see the interface, my brain switches. But the text editors know. So I do understand the need to do that. You'd have to do it manually. I don't know of a site that would let you download stuff like that. But maybe you could set one up. Maybe people would like that. Right. Do we have anything else?
No.
Okay. So they were just some of the features that were in the beta. As I say, the renaming of the layers is beyond me. Why say something's there and actually tell you what the shortcut key is when it's not? And the video was brand new, but there you go. Now you know. Now you know. Right, so I will save that. That'll do. Let's stick it in there and I'll deal with it later. That's really bad practice, but I'm going to do it anyway. Right, what have we got next? Oh, nothing's moving. That's what we've got next. Come on, you do want to move. There we go. Sunshine in Affinity Designer. Right, this was a question that I got asked in relation to a poster that I'd drawn ages ago for MacBites. And it's a technique that I've used since. So there is a technique involved. But what this person wanted to do was create a magazine cover. So it wasn't quite what I'd designed, but it was similar-ish. So we'll go and have a look at it. Sunshine. Right, I'm going to use the standard version of Affinity Designer before there's any other calamities. So let's start there. So if I were designing this, I would probably be designing it as a poster. So I would start with my 720 poster, my 1080 by 720. Now, you may wonder why I'm not starting with 1920 by 1080. Because that's the minimum size I would use for YouTube. It's the minimum size for the presentation. So why start smaller? And the rationale is, when I was making slides in... Oh, do you remember my first presentation, A Night at the Opera?
Mm.
The slides are about the size of a postage stamp. They're really tiny. It was PowerPoint in 2001. Over the years, the slides got bigger and bigger until I started using Keynote and they were 1280 by 720. Widescreen for a widescreen projector. And I got used to what size the font needed to be for a header and what size it needed to be for a subheader and all of the rest of it. When Keynote changed its default to 1920 by 1080, I was lost. I'm like, I have no idea what size that font needs to be. And all of my assets were the wrong size as well. So I tried it with Keynote for a while, like 2-3 weeks. I thought, I can't be doing with it. So I tend to design at 1280 by 720 and upscale as required because it's vector, so it doesn't matter. So that's why I start with this size. It doesn't matter whether I have an artboard or not, but I will be creating another one, so I will add an artboard in, which I could have done at the beginning, but never mind, we now have an artboard. Right, so if it was a poster, let me show you the template that I use. So if we go to File and New, and we go to Templates, I've got a MacBites template, which is this one for the show art. Right, the black thing that says MacBites and the waves is on this template thing here, and that is just there, dirty hack. I wanted these things to have a thumbnail, and Affinity didn't. I won. So all that I've done with that is created an artboard that acts as a thumbnail, and the first thing I do is delete it and delete the object. It's purely so I can see it in there, and that is what it looks like. So this is 1080 by 720, and this one here is the show notes, which is totally the other way and is like a magazine cover, and that is how we use it. So when I'm making a design like this, I do start with the 1280 by 720, but eventually I'm going to want to change this into something completely different. But I am still starting here. So this demonstration is going to show working with shapes, the rotation point, power duplicate, global colours, document palettes, transparency tools, blend modes, you name it. It's going to show quite a bit. But we are starting with a simple shape. So I'm going to get a triangle shape here, like that. Now, I've done this many times, so I know what size it needs to be. Your results will vary depending on what size it actually is. And so the first thing I'm going to need to do is turn that round. And then in the size, so the width of it is now the height because it's on its side. And that is 180, but I'm going to go for something smaller. I'm going to go for 120, which makes it a little bit narrower. Left to right, which is the height because it's on its side, I'm going to make it 1,000. Just to make sure it is going to hang off the canvas, but just to make sure that when I rotate this thing, I don't end up with blank bits. So I need to put that in the middle. So it is in the middle vertically, and it's halfway onto the canvas, and hence the green line. Now, at this point, I want to rotate it. But if I rotate it, it will rotate around the middle, and that is not what I want. I want this point to stay where it is. So without selected, that is the rotation point. I will move it over there. I'll also zoom in. That's a mile off. That should be there. Why are you doing this? Oh, come on. What are you doing? This worked perfectly in rehearsals 27 times, and now it's not. Okay, I'm going to delete this and start again. Do not want grief like this. Otherwise, I'm going to have to open up one I did earlier. Crying out loud. Honestly, I have done this that many times. I've got that many variations of this. And it chooses now to be annoying. Right. I wonder if it's because I changed the size of the screen. It worked absolutely perfectly. That looks better. Hopefully. That's why I said I'm going to zoom in and make sure. But I can't see it at all now. I hope it's not stuck it somewhere. Bizarre. Right. It looks all right. Let's put it there. Right, which is back where we were. Right, let's rotate it, make sure. Oh, jolly good. Right. So the first thing I need to do is duplicate that. So with it selected, Command and J. You can now, of course, in the beta, hold down the Option key and drag. Whether that will power duplicate or not is anybody's guess. Now, the first one, I've now got two of these. So that's the first one, that's the second. The first one was at 90 degrees because obviously I'd rotated it. So I'm going to do that. So it's selected. In here, this is the rotation of 90 degrees. The second one that I've got, I know because I've measured it, I need it to be minus 102, which rotates it around this centre point and leaves a gap in the middle. And then I just need to Command and J to repeat that all the way around. And with a bit of luck, that will work 29 times because there's 30 of them altogether. And I end up with that. Now, why it matters that I've done the maths, that I know the thing is long enough to cover everything and all the rest of that, why the maths matters is if I decided just randomly 79 degrees, 132 degrees, it wouldn't be equal. If you look at that, it's actually equal. If we look at the corners, each corner is the same. Now, that doesn't mean that you've got to stick to that size. I did two alternatives. One was 180 and one was 270. And if you remember your geometry, those numbers will be familiar. So what I've got on here is all of these. Now, at the moment, they are the wrong colour because, grey, not exciting. Not exciting. But what I'm going to do with that is make it bright and sunshiny. So luckily, I can select all of these in the layers. That's got them selected. And then I can go and apply a colour. Now, I want something nice and bright, like the apple yellow in here, like that. Why is that not a good idea to do that? Let me know in the chat. You can, of course, do that. And obviously, because these shapes are going to be grouped together, you would make it easy to change that if you wanted to. But I'm a great believer in using global colours. So any one of these, now you can do your global colours by creating the palette and then manually adding them. You can go up here and then add a global colour, but I already know what colour I want. I want this yellow. So I'm just going to do it a different way. I don't think I've ever demonstrated this way, but if you right click on it, you can add to swatches and you actually get to choose from the fill as a global colour, the line as a global colour, or both as a global colour. And I just want the fill as a global colour. So that does multiple things and saves me time. It makes the palette, it names it document, and it adds the colour, which means I only have to rename it if I want it renamed. So I'm going to rename that to primary. I'm not calling it yellow because if I change it, doubtless it won't be yellow. So primary as far as I'm concerned. Right, we now need the alternatives. And of course you could go through the whole process of getting a triangle and scaling it perfectly so it fills this white gap. Or you could do it the quick way. So let's do it the quick way. So I'm going to draw on here a rectangle. Obviously, colour, totally wrong. This time I want it orange, so I'm going to the Apple palette again and I'm choosing orange. And the only thing that's wrong with it is it's on the top. If it wasn't on the top, it would be fine. So all of the triangle pieces that are currently individual layers, I'm going to group them so they are layers within a group. And that just makes it easier for me to put this behind it. And now the alternatives to the yellow look as though they're individual pieces on their own, but they're not. So obviously if we turn off the starburst effect, it's just a rectangle. But so far so good. Now, talking of turning it off, right, what we do need is this orange we need to add as a global colour. So add to swatches, fill as global. We then go into the document, you see you've got global colour too. So we'll make that one, rename it and make that one secondary. Like that. Now, I've got to make sure that these colours are actually applied to it because sometimes they're not. So I'm going to make sure that that's applied to there. Turn this on. Make sure I've got all of these, and I think these are okay because you can see that is already blue at the top, but just to make sure. Right, so we've got a sunburst effect. Now, it's not bad, and you would probably put something in the middle like wow, pow, whatever. But it could look even better with very little effort. So what I'm going to do, this rectangle at the back, let's close up that one, don't disappear. Right, let's take this rectangle at the back and Command and J to duplicate it. And then move it upwards. Now, it doesn't look great so far, I'll admit, but what we're going to do with it is use the transparency tool. Now, the transparency tool, I didn't used to bother with it, I must admit. I did it by hand. I applied a gradient to it, and then that way I had more control. But the transparency tool does actually work pretty well. So what the transparency tool does, it will fill from where you pull from, and then as it moves down, you have a gradient of transparency. So if I start pulling that down, and I'm holding the shift key, keep it straight, then I have a gradient. It looks a bit too muddy at the top. This is where Mike starts playing around with the transparency, isn't it? And then finally realises he's going to have to tackle a blend mode. So the blend modes that work pretty well with this.
My answer to everything, isn't it?
It just fiddle around with the blend mode. Yeah. Right, there's a couple that work really well. So let's have a look at multiply. Multiply works really well. And linear burn doesn't look too bad either. What should we try? Multiply linear burn. Linear burn seems a bit clearer, a bit clean around the edges. You can play with the opacity as well, so you could reduce the impact slightly. So it still looks as though there is a gradient at the top, and it's going down to lighter at the bottom. It's just not quite as impactful. But I think that looks reasonably well. Obviously, I haven't named the layers, and of course I would do, wouldn't I? And I haven't even got these on the artboard, have I? What am I thinking here? This one needs to go on there. And the other one needs to go on the artboard, or it won't get exported, and that would not be good. So let's pop those on there. Right. Now you can start playing around. So at this point, all of these, the three elements that are making this up are separate, but you could group them together. Depends what you want to do with it. What this person that asked for the tutorial wanted was the bit in the middle, the center point of the whole starburst effect. They didn't want in the middle. So they were wondering whether they'd have to draw it in a different way, but no, you don't, because you can fiddle and you can edit later. So what I'm going to do, so we'll leave that one alone. I'll duplicate the whole artboard and we will drag that over there. Off we go. Next to it. And there we go. I always tend to put them 100 apart, and that way I know where they are. Right. Oh, Renee likes that. Such sunshine reggae. Yeah, we could do that. We could do... What was that thing you did? We're jamming.
Yeah.
That would be a good poster for this. Right. So what I'm going to do with this one is you don't need to change the gradient, nor do you need to change the background. But this in the middle, which is the starburst, you do. So I'm going to turn that off so we can actually see this. Take this group and move the group down. So it looks like it's changing size, but it's not. All I'm doing is moving that down. And then I have a decision to make. How much of this at the bottom do I want showing? Because I could take it further down. Until I get to that point, and you can see what starts to happen. I would have to make the triangles bigger at that point to make sure they're not missing off the corner. But if I can get that into the right place, would that work there? Little bit higher, I think, with the yellow bits there. Like that. And you've got the effect that you're looking for. And then, of course, turn this back on, which was the reason I had this as an overlay over the top of it, rather than being on the back, on the rectangle, was as I'm moving it, I don't want the gradient. I want control of the gradient. I just need the control, obviously. And there we go. Now, this was actually going to be used as Artboard 1. So the Artboard 2 side of it, if you remember back to the template in here, was going to be in a totally different place. The person requesting it was not only was it in a totally different place, it was in a totally different app. So they needed one in Affinity Designer, and then they needed to make the cover in Affinity Publisher. And that's okay. That can be dealt with. So I'm going to put this one up there. We'll call that one full and that one part, because it's at the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to save that file. And where am I putting you? I know I shouldn't put you on the desktop, should I? I shouldn't. I should put you in there. Right, so we'll call that Sunshine in the right place. Okay, so I'm going to close that. Don't need to save that one. And go into Publisher, not the beta. No, don't want any bad words. So it's thinking about opening on the other screen. Still thinking. Yours has gone slow, hasn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in a bit of a mood. Right, so we'll use the standard one I've been using for days and days. So it's an A4. There are margins on it. It doesn't matter if there's margins for a cover, but that'll do. So the rest of the content of the magazine is going to be in here, but the front cover needs making. So very simple. I am going to go to File. I am going to go to Place. I'm going to go to the Sunshine folder, which it's gone somewhere entirely different, but we will get there. There's the Sunshine file, and open it. And I'm going to click up there, but it won't make a difference wherever I click, because it's going to need moving. So down in here, now it's got that one for a start. So if that is the one that's required, fine. If not, because there were two artboards in there, and that's not the one that I want. With this tool at the top, you can see you've got your file mentioned. It's embedded. The size is in there. The page box is in there, and it says artboard and it says part. And I actually want the full one, and that will give you the correct one. You can edit that document from there if you want to. All I need to do with it is get it to a point that it's a reasonable size for this. So I just need the height correct in there. So no, don't keep going. Right. At that point, I can then make my mind up whether it were coming in from the side, because there's actually enough here. We could have it from the side. But ultimately, it was a case of you either want it in the middle, like that, or you want it at the bottom edge. So that's one. What I'm going to do at that stage is duplicate that. And this first one, while that looks okay, good practice is not to have this hanging off the end. So if you go and use the vector crop it down to the right size. So it fits on there. So that's the first one done. Second one, it needs to move and scale and things. So I'm going to zoom out a bit so we can see it. It's going to need to be pulled down there more. So we've got it in the right place. It still needs to come down more. So just past that edge there, that should do. Let's put that on it. And it's right at the top and it's right in the middle. So we've got the red line at the top edge. We've got the green line in the middle. And then crop that one down so it fits. This does not mean that you lose access to the rest of it. You can't change your mind. It just tidies it up so you've not got stuff hanging off the canvas. And then you've got two choices that you can make. And the other thing that is really useful is in here you can see that you've got your crop on it. But in there you could edit that if you wanted to. If you needed to edit that, you could. So there you've got your Sunshiny magazine cover. I did put sunshine on it, didn't I? In a strange font at the other end. So let's go get this. It was a 60s font and it just said sunshine in bright pink. Don't ask. What can I say? It was a stressful day. Right, what on earth was the font? Let's see if I can find it in here. I know it was below that, because I was looking for stuff that looked reasonable. I know it was below that as well. I wonder how far below. I've got no idea what it was called. It was below that one. I tried all of these and none of them looked quite right. That was the problem with it. Did it begin with a G? Some of these are my horror fonts, so we're best leaving those alone. Where on it? There it is. Keep on trucking. And Mike said that was very 60s, didn't you? Yeah, so I made that a hideous pink. Oh, good grief. But I also put a white border on it. And then made that bigger. Like that. It's a definite 60s look. But there you go. Now, the beauty of all of this is, of course, because they're global colours, you can change them. So I then made a blue one. And it just makes it easier to work with. So name everything, make everything global colours, use styles. If you are putting objects in there, so there was one I did and it had some mushrooms in, didn't it? The mushrooms were objects. And that way you change the colour of one, it changed the lot. So those are the kind of things you've got to call out for. So do we have any questions about that?
Yes, Tracy says, how did you create the artboard from the canvas? I'm sure you've done it before, but my Swiss cheese memory can't think how it's done.
Okay, got a couple of options when it comes to artboards. One, as I say, is to make it at the beginning, but sometimes you don't know that you're going to need multiple ones. So I hardly ever make it at the beginning. Come on, you know you want to open, you do. Right, so if I just go to File New, your first option is to create an artboard there. But if you don't, this is the canvas that you're working with. You then have this artboard tool. Now, the artboard tool will let you draw artboards out. But at the top, once you've selected it, it says Document, and you just need to click Insert Artboard, and that will insert an artboard around the area you specified to the size you specified when you created it. If you hit it again, so you've now got your artboard, it will give you another artboard, and it will keep on doing that. If you want a different sized artboard, the artboard tool will let you just draw out an artboard. So if you wanted one that was bigger than that, you could do that. What I do when I'm doing this, so these top three will be 1280 by 720. If I wanted one that was double the size, so I wanted the 1920 by 1080, I just draw one out like that. I don't care how big it is. Because with it selected, the artboard, if you go down to the bottom, you can see the size. And I can then type in 1920 by 1080 and I get it the right size. Once I've done that, you can then lock this. So if you scale it, it will keep the 16:9 ratio. But those are the options you have with the artboard, with the magic mushrooms. It was all to do, we discussed this the other day, it was all to do with a poster for MacBites, where Apple had done their usual and built this wonderful Apple store. And they'd put a staircase in that was glass. Just let that sink in for a while. And then think about what naughty boys would do with their cameras with said glass staircase. So the episode was called something like The Staircase to Somewhere. And there were mushrooms on it, because I just fancied putting mushrooms on it. The mushrooms probably had something to do with the show, but I cannot remember what that was. Jammy, you've missed everything. Yeah, we're just about to wrap up, Jammy. This is what happens when you go to the gym. Naughty, naughty.
Darkside Bob says, I'm guessing this is only doable in version 2.
What are we talking about? The actual...
I don't know, I presume the demo you've just done.
The demo could be done in version 1. There is nothing there at all. Let me have a look at the top of my demos. I put features demonstrated. So shapes, yep. Rotation, yep. Power duplicate, yep. Global colours, document palette, transparency, blend modes. All of that could be done in version 1. All of that could be done on the iPad version as well. There is nothing there at all that is version 2 only. Don't tease you. Well, you'll just have to watch later, won't you? On catch up, you naughty boy. I think Jammy's dog should get all the treats, and Jammy should have no treats this weekend, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yep. And that'll teach you. At least this time you didn't forget. So we're doing quite well. Right, hopefully that answers Tracy's question about the artboards. And off we go. So, no, I didn't have anything there, did I? So that one can disappear. We will save sunshine, though. We might have to do a MacBites poster with that on. Right, so that was sunshine cover. And we will pop that in there. Okay, so I'm closing that down. I have no idea what's coming up next. It's been that kind of week. Oh, yes, it's freebies. This is something we've mentioned before. But there is a new version out today, so you will want to go and get it if you are using DevonThink. DevonThink we covered in a whole series when it came out, version 3. And at the time, Take Control eBooks brought out an ebook. And we're not talking a pamphlet. This is not something with half a dozen pages. As you can see, it's hundreds of pages. 250 odd pages, and it's totally free. I don't know if DevonThink are supporting this in terms of finance, but it's totally free. So you need to go to takecontrolbooks.com/DevonThink-3. That is the QR code. And you'll be able to download that completely free. They may have mailed you if you've bought, because you do go through a purchase process. They may have mailed you and told you that this is available. But it's because I think we're now up to 3.9, which is always a dicey time, isn't it? It's looking like DevonThink 4 might be on the way and we need to repay. And it's not cheap. But it's up to 3.9 and the book is now up to 3.9. Right, okay, next thing. Working with free templates in Affinity Publisher. So I've had about 5 or 6 enquiries about various things that are going wrong when people are trying to use free templates. It's not the fact that they're free that's the problem. It's the fact that one of two things is going on. Either the template was never designed for Affinity Publisher, and indeed, in many cases, has never even seen Affinity Publisher. And the problem with that is it was created in InDesign, and it was exported to IDML, which Affinity Publisher reads, but it depends on the quality of the original document as to how well it reads it in Affinity Publisher. So people are saying to me, this isn't working, that isn't working. The other reason that it may happen is that the template is dedicated to Affinity Publisher, is made in Affinity Publisher by someone who maybe didn't know as much as would be wise for them to know before they release a template. So things are not named, they're grouped weirdly, not the way you would build it, which gives you problems, like I said, trying to select a graphic and then you find out it's behind 3 other frames. So things like that. So I've found a free template, which is this brochure, and Mike's going to put the link in now. If you want to follow along, that's the one I'll be working with. So it's a trifold brochure. It did start life in InDesign. It is totally free. It does use a couple of fonts that you may not have on your system, so I will show you how to deal with that. There are objects in there, there's text in there, there's styles in there, there's all kinds of weirdness going on in there. If this is something that you look at and you think to yourself, it's a one-off job, I just need to get it out of the door, then do what you need to do. But if you are thinking, I might need to use this again, then if you take a little bit of time at the beginning and sort it out, using it for a second time is way easier. And the other thing is that you don't have to go back to this original. What I would do with something like this, I have clients that approach me and it's like, I've got this free template and I just wanted to put my stuff in it and I've realised it's going to take me longer than it's worth. Can you do it? And I get this template, I'm like, oh, look at the mess of this. And my first question is this a one-off? Because if it's not, then what we should do is make a personal template for you from this file and do it properly. And then the next time you come to make it, your whole life is a lot easier. So this is what I do when I'm faced with that situation. So have they got the link, Mike?
Yes.
Jolly good. Right. So this is what the template looked like. It downloaded as a zip file. And all I've done with it is unzip it. I've not done anything else. This is what I've got. Right, first thing to think about, what size are you working with? So all of these at the bottom are to do with letter size. I would probably be working with A4. So the first thing I do is put a folder in there, ZZ, which forces it to the bottom, and NIU, which is not in use. Because it's too easy to come in here and think IDML, there's the IDML version, and at that stage I'm working with 2 different sizes. Don't do that. So I know that I'm probably not going to be using these because they're not the size that I want. If you're using letter, then do exactly the same with these ones here. Right, the next thing. There may be a README file. In this one, there's no README file, but this says font used. So if I open that up, it's got Montserrat and Open Sans. They are both free, but as template providers, you are not able to include the fonts, even if they're free. So what you will find in files like this, and this is the same whether you purchase a template or not, you may have in your README file or a dedicated font file, just some instructions as to where you can go and find those fonts. And that's where those fonts are. I don't know if I've got Montserrat or Open Sans installed. I have no idea. Let's go and have a look. So I'm going to open that text file, first of all, which should open in Sublime Text if it's thinking about doing it at all. And let's just keep that to one side. So get that out of the way. And those are the fonts. So I'm just putting that on another screen to refer to it. But I have created a shortcut key, which is not that one, is it? No, it is that one. FF, open the fonts folder. So if I do that, it will open my fonts folder. Oh, and look at that. It's even opened it here at the M's, where I can see I have all the Montserrats in all the colours, in all the sizes. So it looks like it isn't going to give me any problem over that. It could do, but it's looking good for that one. The other one was Open Sans, and it looks like I've got Open Sans as well. But if not, I can go download them. So let's have a look at the Montserrat download page. So paste that in. It opens it up. That is Font Squirrel, and let me show it to you. Right. Yes, this screen, this one. Right, that's what it looks like. So all you need to do is hit the download up here, and Font Squirrel is a decent enough site. I would trust downloading from there. There are a few other font sites that you can download from. You see how many different versions in there, and they are all totally free. So that's what you would need to do. To get to here is your Macintosh hard drive if you're on a Mac, users, your username, library fonts. Obviously, I get there quite sufficiently, so I have that shortcut to get to it. If you do not have that shortcut to get to it, let's go up to there. You would go to Go, hold the Option key down, choose Library, and within Library, don't like it in that view, type F for font, and there's your fonts. And then you get to exactly the same place that I just did. On Windows, it's slightly different. I'll be honest, I've no idea where they are. They're going to be in the Windows folder somewhere, aren't they? Mike, they're going to be in...
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Please say yes. They're somewhere in the Windows folder because it's system related. But it will depend on which version of Windows you've got. But that's the idea. So I've already done this bit. So I don't particularly need that either. I will need that if I find out that the specific variation of the font I don't have, in which case I'll come back and sort it out. Right, so what am I left with up here? Well, bizarrely for this, we've got 3 different files for the inside and 3 different files for the outside. Why? Why have we got that? It's a trifold mailer or a brochure, so it could be in one file. Why would it not be in one file? If I was designing it, it would be in one file. So there's an issue before we get any further. We can't use the INDD because Affinity doesn't read it. So they can go in our not in use folder. Right, that leaves us these. We can use any of these. It's better to use IDML than PDF, especially if you want to edit it. And what we want to do is make our own proper template, because an IDML file is not a template. It's a starting point, but it's not actually a template. So, well, I don't think we're going to need the PDFs either, so they can go in there. That means we're left with the IDMLs for the inside and the outside, and that way I'm only dealing with 2 files and not getting confused with all the others. You might think, oh, I would know, and I would just, I would know to use those 2. Trust me, there are mistakes made. Don't risk it. Just put everything in a not in use folder. Right, we'll start with the inside one, because it's at the top. If we open with, I need to choose, because I do have InDesign installed, and we wouldn't want it opening in that, would we? Right, I'm going to choose Affinity Publisher 2. This does work in Affinity Publisher 1. So again, I don't think there's anything that I'm going to be showing here that wouldn't work in version 1. So it's having a rare think about it. Sometimes it takes quite a while to open an InDesign file, but it tends to depend on the actual contents of it, and there isn't much in here. Right, so you need to look at what you've got. Don't start fiddling and putting your own content in at this stage. Literally look at what you've got. Do you have any master pages? There's a double page spread for the master. Is that applied to here? Yes, it is. How do we know that? Because there is the A master right applied to it at the bottom. Does it need to be a spread? No, it doesn't. Here's the problem. If we decide that we want to put both of these pages in the same file, I'm going to need somewhere to put the second page. So I'll just say, add a page. So if I add one page after page 1, we end up with them, because it's set to facing pages, just looking weird. This does not need facing pages at all. So with nothing selected, you go to the document setup and you can change that. So you've got a whole range of options here. You've got your document, which is your millimeters, your size, the image placement, and I always choose embedded. That's just me. Under the model, you have facing pages, and I don't particularly need facing pages. And then OK. It doesn't delete anything, even the master, it just separates it. So we now have A master and A master, so there's 2 of them. but they are separate. It's not a spread anymore. Right, so far so good. So we've got this second page. By comparison to what we've got on the first page, is the second page ready to have the outside content added? If not, what's missing? Well, we have a bleed on it that's represented in red, which isn't normal in Affinity Publisher. That's not the default. But because this has come from InDesign, you have some quirks that have come with it, and that's one of them. But I'll leave that as it is. There is something missing, and the something missing is these grey boxes at the back of each of these, which are marking the place which is the left and right edge of the text. So these icons are pushing up to this grey box on the left, and the text is going across on the right. So we could do with those on here. Would they come in if we dragged the other file in? No. It would actually be better, and certainly required, if this had multiple pages. If this was going to be 80 pages, put it on the master. But I think we can be quick and dirty with this because we know we only need 2 pages. Right, I could, of course, go into this page and go into my guides, and I could see what's set up. And it's set up for 3 columns, and the margins are lurid pink at 12 millimeters. I can see I've got a gutter of 16 millimeters. I could duplicate all of that. I've also got 2 vertical guides in here as well. I could duplicate all of that. In fact, when I'm working with something like this, I actually use an app called Snappy App. And what Snappy App does, this dialog box, if I were to click on Obsidian to make a note of what these settings are, like that, they just disappear. It's infuriating. Because of the modality of the dialog box. So what I actually do is I use Command Shift and 2, and you see my cursor changes like it's going to take a screenshot, and that's exactly what it's going to do. I press the space bar and I want a screenshot of that dialog box. But instead of saving it, it pops it up. You can see this is different from the dialog box. When you hover over it, you get this, which enables you to drag and drop it somewhere. You get this to close it, and you get this to do other things with it. So this is not the dialog box, it is a screenshot of the dialog box. Related, and obviously, don't do this to a loved one. But if you close the guides on the left and left the screen cap on there, they could be playing for hours trying to get rid of it, thinking it had crashed. Do you remember doing that years ago with Word?
Yes.
It was a naughty thing to do. So what I do with this, it means I can refer to this on the right, I can drag it around. So I drag it off screen so I can see everything, because not only with this screenshot can I see it, and if I click away, it doesn't disappear. It's modal. But even better than that, if I click back on this, I can make it bigger for my poor aged eyes. So I would drag that off the screen. That is a totally separate app. Version 2 is coming soon, but I use that all the time. But we can do better than that, because that would be very time consuming. So here's the best way to handle it. Go to page 2 and delete it. Go back to page 1 and duplicate it. I know it's got content on it, but we're not concerned about the content. So Command and A and delete the whole thing. What we're left with is just what we need to be working with. Okay, checking that, and that's interesting. Right, so this is ready for our content. So the next step is to open up the outside. And again, I need to right click and open with and go to Affinity Publisher 2 or Affinity Publisher. Right, you can see in here, you've got all the same issues, you know, it's double faces, facing pages, all kinds of stuff. But over here, this is the content that I want. So if I just select the layers and copy it, and I go back into here, making sure I'm on page 2, and paste it in, we're good to go. And that way, it was just a time-saving thing. We've still got a heck of a mess to sort out, but we're getting there. So like I say, if this is something like church brochure that you're going to put out every month, it is worth taking the time and fixing these problems. So we've got the content in there. Obviously, you're not going to want somebody else's content though. So you still need to look around and have a look what's going on with this file. The place I loathe to go, I'll be honest, is the text styles. Because I just think, oh no, it's going to be a complete and utter nightmare. And it usually is. Because obviously we have text here. They're in the green boxes. And it needs to be some kind of style, doesn't it? Also, you can see in here how many layers you've got going on. That is in the text, but there's multiple boxes. And you probably wouldn't need every paragraph like that. So this is some of the thing you probably deal with towards the end, or I would. Right, what I would look at is basically the layout of the page that I've got. So here I have layers, and they are named. They're not greatly named, but they're named. What I would need to do is see what's on all of this. So if I turn it off and I start working from the back, it's saying that's the background. Why are there 4 triangles on it? Where's the rest of it? Well, that is also saying it's the background, and they kind of go together, don't they? So why are they separate? So I then toggle this one off and think, yeah, that's just 2 shapes. And this one is just the other 2 shapes. So these to me would make sense to put them together at the back and lock them out of the way. So all that's actually in here is 2 shapes, 2 curves. And all that is in this one is the triangles that make that look like 3D. And I don't actually think it would matter with that, whether they're on the same layer or not. No idea why they've done that. But notice what they have done. The background says background, and this says background too. This one is orange. The little icon is orange. It's normally white. All these icons are white. But this one's orange. This one's red. We've got the images as blue. There's a light blue on here, and the text at the top. Now, I'm guessing that you know if you right-click on here and you go down to the bottom, you've got colours here. So if I change this red one to blue, it should change to blue. It doesn't. What it does is put a blue flash over here. It does not impact the colour of that icon. That icon is controlled via the properties at the very bottom. The layer name and the layer colour. And from in there, you can choose any colour you like. If it's the background, to be honest, I'm more likely to want it to be grey and then just dimmed out. I would have that towards the back. And then I think we could move these 2 items. I don't see a problem in moving those 2 into there. Like that. Then this background one can be deleted. So one of the things you need to do, and I would suggest it's one of the first things you do, is do an analysis of what is in there. And ask questions like, why are they on 2 separate layers? And if the answer is there's no good reason, then consolidate them, simplify it, delete stuff. So this one here, I can then delete that. And that one I've got as grey now, and it says background. I do tend to put capitals in, just the way I am, so I can put background in it. And I'd probably then lock that. And then I move on to the next thing. So this one is an image. I'm not seeing it yet, so let's turn it on. And it looks like there's 2 images. There is a curve at the top and a curve at the bottom, and they are for placing images. So I would probably call them image placeholders at this stage, or images corners, something like that. But basically just go through it and try and work out what on earth they've done with it. So turning this one on, they've got the elements separate from the text. That's one way to do it, isn't it? And then finally, they've got the text. What I would be thinking of with the text is, I don't like that is one block of text. That's workable. That is one block. That is one block. I'm not quite sure why these are separate. It could be that they want them lined up with these shapes. So you may decide to leave that alone, or you may decide to totally change how the text flows, because there'd be a lot of copying and pasting into just tiny text boxes here. So at that point, I'd be looking at the text styles. Oh no, I was right. It's a nightmare. Right, how this normally works, as far as I'm concerned, let's start folding things up. That's as good as we can get. That's not good. That is not good. I like to have a base style. So if you create a new file from scratch, I've not changed this at all. If you go into your text styles, you will have a base style. I have this toggled on so I can see the hierarchy. And I sort by type. And then within the type, they're sorted alphabetically. I turn off the samples because the samples are useless if the text is white. So I toggle that off. So I see a style tree. Starting with a base style. So in here, what we're actually looking at is text that has no style whatsoever. The top one is no paragraph style. The lower one is no character style. The only character styles you have available in here is emphasis and strong. And when you open strong, strong emphasis is a child style of strong. And these three styles are character styles, and that's what the A means. Everything else is under the base style, and the rationale for that is most documents have a font which is the most common font, and that should be defined at the base level. Most documents have a font of a certain size, and that can be set at the base level. Everything else hangs off that. So the base style forms the basis of the body style. And in the body style, we have drop caps, boxes, lines above, all kinds of stuff. All of these, if you think about it, if you want to put a drop cap on there, you want it to be the same style as the body style. You also have in here bullet styles. So bullet 1 and bullet 2. Bullet 2 is nested under bullet 1. And you have heading styles. I actually nest my heading styles under a style called headings. And that way, most of my headings are the same font. If I decide I want to change that, I change it at the heading group level. So how I would do that is I would add a group. I would call it headings. I would tell it it's a group. I would reset that and OK. So I then have in there a group. Where's my group gone? Headings there. In these headings here, I would edit the style. And where it says based on base, I would base that on headings. Like that. And that would build up the structure. So I would go to the heading there, I would edit that, and I would put that inside my headings as well. So that is based on headings as well. So there's my headings group. There are my two heading fonts. If you're thinking, yes, but no, they were based on based and now they're not. If I go into my headings group and I base that on base, now we're back to where we were. So if I change the base font, my headings will change. So this tree over here gives you immense power when it comes to formatting. You make one change and you can update 300 styles, as long as this hierarchy is accurate, which is our problem. Because when we go in here, what is this? What mess is this? We've got body 2. Why have we got body 2? Title 4, 5, title 1 being under the others. Is that because there's a spelling mistake? I need better glasses. Is there a spelling mistake there? I can't tell. But basically it's a mess. That is a mess. I would probably start from scratch with that. Because you'd have to work through what nothing is linked to anything in here by the look of it, although we do have something nested in there. So a quote is nested under here. So I would probably nuke that and start again. There is no base style in there, so that's a good place to start. Add a base style. And then work through what you need. So there would need to be a heading for this. There would need to be a heading for that, where they would look the same, but they would have a different font. So if we look at that, that is Montserrat Extra Bold 16 with a teal colour on it, which we can tell from up here. Right, if they are our headings, you can make this a little bit easier on yourself. Everything, well, there's some stuff under base. Oh, what a mess. Can't be doing with it. Right, what I would do with those headings. So I would work through the entire document like this, but the place I would start is I would make a group style and I would call that base. It's not based on anything and there's no style in it. And that is the top of my tree now. I have a base style. My title fonts and text-based fonts would all go under that. You've just seen me do the headings, so let me do the headings. I'm going to base this on base, but I'm going to call it headings. And it is a group style, and OK to that. So now my headings are going to be in here. Right, this is then what I do. This heading looks like it's the biggest heading. So this is, no, is it? Or is that bigger? Is that just capitals, or is it bigger? No, it's 16, it's the same. So let's say that this is one of our headings. So I then add a paragraph style, but I base this, so this is saying it's based on title 4. So there is some kind of nesting going on, but we can't see it. So it's going to be a nightmare to try and deal with. But I'm not going to be dealing with any of that. I'm going to put this in heading. Obviously, I'm going to have to resize it. It should still be 16, but it's not. Never mind. We'll make it on headings. Although it says 16 at the bottom, so it's doing weird things, but let's not worry. Right, so that would be my heading 1, but it would be my heading 1 teal. Because that colour may change, calling it teal isn't the best idea. The best idea would be to call it primary. And OK. Then what I would need to do is make sure that it's correct. So it's not far off. It's just changed the size for no apparent reason whatsoever. So we'll change that back to 16. That looks good. I will go here and update the primary heading, which means technically I should be able to go in there and make that a primary heading, and it changed fractionally, but it'll do. And then the next thing to do would be to make a style for this one, which is the secondary. That's really easy because it's the same font, it's the same family of the font, it's the same size, and it's bold. The only difference is the colour. So if I duplicate that, that one's going to be based on headings as well, but I'm going to call this secondary. And all I need to do in there is make sure that the colour is correct. So the difference is it's going to have a different fill. So I will go and get the colour, which is that colour, and apply that, and OK. And we're starting to build it up. So it is a case of going through it and doing that with it. This is my body style. I have no idea what that is in here. Body 2. I don't know why it's not body 1, but never mind. So in there, with that selected, I would then go and add another paragraph style. And that would be body. I might have to put something after it at the moment, like work in progress, because I don't want to delete any of the other ones yet. But I will put some kind of code on it so I know that this is the one that I have created. And I don't want it based on body 2. This one needs to be based on the base. And off we go again. Don't change it that much. Excellent. Right. So what I'm building up here, I've got my base style, I've got my headings in there, and there's my body work in progress. And I would do that throughout the rest of the document. Do we have any questions on that before I head and do something else?
We don't.
Oh, right. They're either asleep or you're following along. Right. Then I would probably get rid of half the content here, but I need to look at page 2 and see what we've got in page 2. Right. You should have been screaming at me. So you clearly are asleep. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong, Mike?
No idea.
When I made the style for the headings, let's open up those headings. Let's go into the secondary headings. I changed the colour, right? And I picked it up from up here. It's not a global colour. So if I want to change it down the line, it needs to be a global colour. So I need to think about global colours as well. So don't forget that you can go in here and you can pick up items like that, and you can do the add to colours. Have I got that selected? I don't think I've drilled down enough. There we go. Let's do that and add to swatches, fill as global. That means I will get a document palette. Oh, it's got loads of rubbish in it, hasn't it? Right, so there is a document palette. This InDesign supports that, but the orange isn't there. Oh, the orange is there. Hang on, is this the orange? Yeah, there we go. The orange is there. Right, okay then. So that can be my global colour. So, not very helpfully named though. So if I call this my primary orange, I'm going to rename that. I don't think that's a great name. You can leave it there at the end if you like because it's got your CMYK value. But if we call it orange primary, and put a dash in, keep that out of the way. Okay, then what I need to do is make sure that in my heading, which is this one, the secondary one, instead of just randomly choosing a colour, I need to go find it. So go to the global colours, there's my orange primary, and use that. And that way, once I've applied, and I would probably need to go through and do this as well, once I've applied the orange that I need to all of the elements, so the diagrams here, the shape fills, all kinds of stuff, if I want to change it, I can do by changing it in the global area. Right, I can see the chat moving. Is that questions or
No.
chat? Okay. Right, so at that point, you can probably then start to get rid of content. But let's go and look at the layers on this one as well. This one's got the same kind of thing going on. So this is now the second page. So we saw the first one. I probably would leave this as a text layer. So text or copy. This just says element. That's not very useful. So let's have a look what element is. Right, they're icons. So elements is fine. Icon elements is probably better. Right, and this one is the image placeholders that are in the corners. So again, that is now fine. But when I go on to page 2, you can see we're back to one almighty mess over here. So we've got a background and we've got another element of background. So I would do what I did before, which is turn them all off and leave me with what I've got here, which is just this background thing there, that one. What is on here is just those corners again. So I'm flummoxed as to why they do that. To me, these would just be in the background. So if we open those up and drag these from here up to in there, so in the background, we don't need that one, which is background 2. So that can disappear. Where's our delete? Like that. Now, on the other one, this background would go to the back. On the other one in here, we change the colour of this to the grey thing. So I would do the same just for consistency. Very infrequent, I actually change the icons, but obviously it can be done. So down in the properties, change that to grey, which was in that corner. And I would change that to background with a capital B, I think. And I would lock it. And then I start working upwards. So what's on this image thing here? And if I'm uncertain, I would do that to have a look at it. And it is a shape, hand-drawn by the look of it, that you can put an image in it. So that's fine. I'll leave that alone. These are the elements again. So icons and elements. So icon, elements. That is fine. And finally, we have the text and copy at the top. So text or copy. Right. Obviously, the copy that's in there now is not what you want. So let's pretend that I've deleted it. So I would delete this or leave like lorem ipsum in, which is pretty much what this already is, to be honest. But once you've got this layout that you're happy with, so you would change the address to be the business address that you're working with, all of this information, any text that you want on it, and any placeholders. So this could be like, what is coming up in the next quarter, and then you can leave it blank. So take it as far as you possibly can, and that's the point then to make a copy of it. Now, at the moment, it's a bit odd with this. It's not a template. It's not a proper template. It also has no master pages. So if the document was a training manual, you may have master pages for exercises and for instruction and stuff like that. This doesn't really warrant that, if you think about it, because it's only 2 pages. There would only ever be 2 pages. So it doesn't particularly need master pages. So some people are tempted to just save the file, put a name on the end like master, and then you'll never overwrite it. But you know what? You will. There'll be an accident and you will. So once you've taken it as far as you possibly can and you've tidied it up as much as you possibly can, you've got your global colours in there, you've got anything else you need, you've got your layers in there, you've colour coded your layers, you've sorted your styles out. Once all of that has been done, that is the point to go to File and Export as Template, a proper template. Now again, I have already set up on Dropbox. So if we look at where this is, it's my user folder, Dropbox, Application Support, Affinity Publisher. And inside there, I have at the very top, Templates, Assets and Fonts. So obviously it's going to go into Templates. I have 4 groupings of templates. So I have templates for Mike's posters. I have some photo book templates. I've got ones for blank documents and I've got the MacBites ones. I know the MacBites ones are there. So I'm going to, oh no, that's a bingo card. That's interesting. Let's assume, is yours there? Yeah, that was your handout, wasn't it? I'll stick it in MacBites and hope it's there. Right, so I will save it in there. Obviously it's not the business inside now. It's our trifold for our business. So I'll just put A4 trifold and save it. And at that point, it's saved a template. But what we're looking at here, what we're still working with, is not the template. This is the original file as was. So I'm going to do a save as with that one, just really to get away so we can close it. So let's close that, close that, close that. And now when you go to File and New, and you choose Templates, fingers crossed, there's the MacBites one, there's the bingo card, and there is what we've just created. So when you open that, you are not going to overwrite it. It is a new document and it is untitled. If you need to make some changes, so if you've discovered an errant text style or anything like that, correct it. So File New from Template, open it up, correct it. And then before you do anything else, before you add anything that is custom to this particular document, just do exactly the same again. So we can see that it's different. I'm going to grab that and make it a different colour like that. Right, so go back to Export as Template. Exactly the same procedure. I'm going to go into Templates. It was in the MacBites one. I'm going to click that, which will pick up the name. You can see it's an AF template file. And I will save it. And I'm not sure it put that in the right place. Let's have a look. I may have needed to drill down one. I did. I needed to go into there and do that. And I knew that it hadn't done it because it didn't ask me to replace it. Now it is. So if I close that and go back to File New, I'll now have 2 of them. But I want the one that's in MacBites, and there it is. Now, you'll notice in there, it's not got the blue flash. It takes a bit of time to update, but the blue flash is there, which is why I have the dirty hack of putting the thing over the top of it, and then any changes I make doesn't change the thumbnail. And there you go. So at that point, what you are then working with is your version of that template. Now compare that with what you would be doing if you had to go back to the original that was in 2 files. The styles were all over the place. The styles in one file wouldn't have been the styles in another file. All the layers were wrong. Perfect. Perfect. I know it takes a little bit of time, and you will be sitting there thinking to yourself, do I want to take the time with this document? And it's not always the right thing to do. If it's a one-off job and somebody just wants it quick and dirty yesterday, then just make the changes and send it back. But how many times do they then come knocking and want it again and again and again? So it's up to you to make a judgment as to whether it is worthwhile doing that. So do we have any questions on that?
We do. We have one from Peter. Can you have 2 base styles?
You can, because while we're calling a base style base, we're calling it that so we know what it is. But in some of my files, I mean, this is a nightmare to work with, isn't it? It's shocking. So let's get a new file. A new file will have that base style at the top. But the only thing that makes that base style anything different than anything else is the fact that you've called it base. It's just a group style. So there are occasions, let me have a look in here. Right, if we look at this, which is my calendar creation kit, and we drag that one on. Right, if I drag that on, no, it wasn't that one. It was one of these. Say that's January. Let's drag that on. You see what happened over here? Styles automatically appeared in my text styles because I dragged something from the assets. So when I made this asset, it had a style on it. So as I dragged it into the assets, it took the style with it. You'll notice over here that the calendar creation kit styles are at the same level as the base. And that is for a very good reason. If I'd have said when I was creating the calendar creation kit, they should be a child of the base style. And that way, when people add it to their work, it will automatically add it to the base style. And it will all ripple through. No, it doesn't. It creates another base style called base 1. And that way madness lies. Stuff starts going. You will look at it and think, which is the real one? And why is that in base 1? And when you need to make a change, instead of changing base, you'll need to change base and base 1. But for something like this situation, it's better if the calendar creation kit styles are totally separate. And that way there's no clashing with the base style. If I were to add something else from another calendar creation kit, I'd then have 2 called calendar creation kit. So one tip I would give you is when you're working with these textiles, put them in any order that makes sense to you. Create a hierarchy that makes sense to you. But if you are going to take things and put them in assets, do think about going to the top level and creating, in essence, a base style just for those assets. Because otherwise, trying to style them, you'll be there for days and days. So this one has added the months to it, the month style. And there's other stuff in here, I've no idea which now. But when I drag and drop those on, this calendar creation kit gets new styles added. But they were never part of the base style originally, and that was why. But short answer, yes, you can. You can have multiple base styles. You can call them base 1, 2, and 3 if you want. I would name them as for what they are, just to make sense. But not everything has to come off the root of base, no. In fact, the root of your styles is actually the textiles panel. And then the next level down is base, and in my case, calendar creation kit. And also, the no styles, the emphasis and the strong. They are all at the very top level. Do we have anything else?
No.
Okay, right. Let's get rid of that then. Oh, hang on. Let's just get you out of the way. Okay. So, we are moving on to managing projects with Kanban in Obsidian. So Obsidian so far has been plain text files. And that is the beauty of it. You do not need to import and export per se, as some people do with Evernote. Evernote used to be great at that, and the legacy version still is. I've got 16,000 notes. It takes about 25 minutes to export them. But the new version of Evernote only lets me export 100 at a time, so I'd be there a while. So contrast that with Obsidian, where your notes are your notes, they're markdown files, and they live on your hard drive. You can synchronize them if you want with any cloud service. But ultimately, they are text files. You are not locked in. However, some people have said to me, if I'm not locked in, then I don't get the fancy features that are in other applications. And the good news is, actually, you can. So still sticking with the plain text files, you can create systems that you would look at and think, oh, Notion. So this week I'm going to look at Kanban, and next week we're going to extend that and look at projects. But I have used this Kanban board multiple times for multiple projects, and it's just genius. So that's what we'll start with. And remember, everything in here is free. So where's my demo vault? There's my demo vault. Haven't even installed it in here, but this is the one we were using last week. So we still have in here all the stuff from last week with the Mac OSs and stuff like that. But I'm going to add to this now a creation pipeline or something like that, making blog posts, making YouTube videos, a process. Now, if I were scripting it, I might just type the script in. It's not that I'm talking about. It's actually managing the progress of a project through your creation pipeline. And Kanban is a great way to do that. If you've seen Trello, Asana, ZenKit, Notion, they all have Kanban boards. And you may think to yourself, plain text, not a Kanban board. No, it's not, but we can deal with that. So I'm going to go into the preferences in here, and it's a community plugin. So every time I go into the community plugins, I do a quick check and see if anything needs updating. Now we've only got in here 3 of them, and they don't need updating. So what I need to do is go to the community plugins and browse. And I'm browsing for something called Kanban. Now, there are 4 in there. Looking at them, I would know instantly which one to try first. And it would be this one, because I'm looking at the number of downloads. You know, this one's had 800 odd. It might be fabulous. But I would start with this Kanban one at the top. So click on that and it shows you in here your information about it. So it is create markdown backed Kanban boards. And it shows you what this is going to look like. And it is still plain text, believe it or not. So I need to install it. That's my first step. So I'm going to install it. It takes a few seconds. When it installs it, it does not enable it by default. You need to actually enable it. You can do that either from in here, or you can go back to where your plugins are and you can see the Kanban one is listed. Because it's not active, it's not actually listed in the community plugins you have installed. But if you slide that across, the cog should appear. Jammy, how's your cog doing? That is your options. If you don't have that, it's exactly the same as you would get by clicking in here. So I go into there and these are the options. So what you're doing at this stage is setting the defaults for the Kanban. So when do you want a new line to appear? And you have some options, Shift and Enter, or you can just press Enter. Now it's easier for me to make it Shift and Enter because I press Enter all the time and then I don't want a new card. You can prepend to cards or you can append to cards. So the default there is to append to it. There's no template defined for the note. So the note is going to be the card that's going to represent the project you're working on. And there's no template specified in there. If you go to it, you can see no template. You can also see loads and loads and loads of other pages. Basically every page in the thing. I'm going to leave it set to no template. You can specify a default folder for the cards if you want. So again, you've got options in here to specify it. I'm leaving everything set at the default. You can hide the card count if you want. I think it's actually quite useful to see the card counts. Having said I'm leaving everything, I'm changing that one. You can change the list width. So these are going to be displayed in columns. Each one of the columns is known as a list. So this one is 272, which is the default. I'm going to leave it. Right, maximum number of archived cards. when you're working on stuff, you will get to a stage where things are done and they will end up in the completed column. I've always found that to be quite difficult to work with when it scoots off the end and there's like 3,000 things that you've done. You can archive them. And then this is determining how many archive cards you are allowed. So again, I'm going to leave that alone. Right. Do you want to see a checkbox? So when you're looking at it, you would have a checkbox. And at certain points, you may want that checkbox to be filled in that, yes, that's done. So we'll turn that one on. You can hide the tags. So if you've got tags in there, you can hide them from the title. And a couple of others. So change the tag colours. Do you want to see the tag colours or not? So I'm going to leave those be. Right. Then you've got a series of interface elements that you can see in the header. You can toggle these off. So if you never use certain options, you can just turn them off. So if you don't want to inadvertently archive the completed card, you can turn this off. I will show you where they are and it'll make much more sense when you've seen them. Right, then you've got some triggers, whether things are date triggered or time triggered. You can choose the format. So it makes sense to me to leave these alone because these are my default formats. So I always start with the year, the month and the day. This was one of the things in Rome I just could not deal with. It was an American date. And while everything sorted well for a year, once you got beyond the year, it didn't. So I'm leaving all of these the same. And then we've got even more options. So do you want to show a relative date, which is how long ago you were working on something? And I never want that. But the option is there if you do. You can hide the card display dates completely if you want, and you can hide dates in the card title. You can change the colours of them, and you've got these extra things that you can add here. Do you link the dates to the daily note? I don't do that. It might make sense actually, but I tend to use this as a quick and dirty way to process through something. So if I've been on a course, and I've been on courses where it's 50 hours a week, and I've got that many notes, and I've got that many auto transcriptions to process, and I use this as a quick and dirty way to just put a tick in it. Yes, I've done that one. I've made the notes on that. I've made the notes on that. And then I can instantly see what is outstanding, but I don't use the actual notes themselves as the card. I keep the Kanban separate from it. It'll make more sense when you see it. Right, and I think we've got it all at that point. We've got all of these options there. I'm leaving the majority of them alone, and that's it. It's sorted. But you'll see we're not looking at a Kanban yet. And that's because I haven't actually created one. I've installed the plugin, I've enabled the plugin, and I've set some defaults for the plugin, but I haven't actually created a Kanban. So Command and P gives us access to all of the options we've got. And if I type in the Kanban, the option is there to create a new board. So I'll press that. And that is our Kanban. Now, there's a bit of a display issue at the moment. It used to work perfectly. I don't know why at the moment it's not. But next to the cancel button, you can see there's a button, but you can't see what it says. I have updated. This is the very latest version. It's just there. So it is there. You will see it shortly. So let's say the first column, my first list, I want to be ideas. As I hover over this, I then get add list. So I think that is literally just a display issue. The only option you have in here is whether you want the cards in this list to be marked as complete, and I don't. This is just my ideas. And that adds me a column to my Kanban, which if we do that, takes it full width. So these are the buttons I was talking about being displayed. So this one, which is archive the completed cards, if you don't want to inadvertently hit that, you could take it away. So let's have a look at that while we're there. So we had our buttons here, archive completed cards. Let's toggle that off. And it's disappeared. Right, but one list is no good. Right, next list. So if something is an idea, the next step is probably something like serious consideration. I don't mention that in front of Peter, dare I? But serious consideration. Right, and add that list, which is the next step, and so forth. So the third one would be scripting. And again, add the list. So you add as many stages to the process as you need. So the next one would probably be recording. The next one would be editing. And probably ready to publish. And the final one would be published. So if I put published in there, this is the one when something is moved to it, I would want it marked as complete. So I'll toggle that on and say add the list. And that gives me all the stages that I need. So I need to add an idea. Should we add a note to self? Right, note to self video. Right. As soon as I do that, it adds the cards to the notes column. You'll notice here, this box is the indication whether it's complete or not. Right, I would then add more stuff to that. So what requests have we had for stuff? Oh, there was Vectornator, wasn't there? Vectornator, that was one. Oh, Pixelmator Pro. Pixelmator Pro. So they go into the ideas. And then they move to serious consideration. Right, like that. And they can be done just by literally dragging and dropping them like that. That changes the status of the card to the next step in the process. Right, that can actually move to scripting because, you know, it really is. Scripting and data. Yeah, scripting and data is that stage. So you use this to track the progress. It's very simple at one level, but so powerful at another. I've found that, as I'm saying, you know, these courses where it's 50 hours a week, I don't have that many columns, but the columns I have are really important. And I put notes in each one like, you know, I need to present this for next week. And then that becomes a to-do. And you literally move these things along. So at the moment in recording, we could have that we're doing after hours. 184. Right, that doesn't get added. So that's not going to get to the added. It's not going to get ready to publish either. It's published straight away at the end of it. So if I move that to there, two things happen. One, it gets put in the published column, but two, it gets marked as complete. And the reason it gets marked as complete is because we set that published column to be complete. So if what we were tracking on here was our part of this, and I was only taking it to the recording stage, I may choose that when I add one of these, so let's say I move this along, I'm considering it, I'm scripting it, I've recorded it, but I'm sending it out to a third party to be edited, then once it goes for editing, as far as I'm concerned, it's complete. Because I'm not doing anything else with it now. Somebody else is going to do that. But once it gets to the publish stage, then I want it to automatically be marked as done because there's nothing else I can do with that yet. And that is the Kanban view. I love that. The one we're looking at next week takes this a whole step further. But I still think there's scope for this one because it's so simple. I don't particularly want to see this based on date or anything else. I want it really simple. You know, there's X number of stages in the process, and I just need to drag and drop each one to the next stage until it gets to the end, and then that's it. Now, how is it doing this if this is plain text? And it's just a view of the data. So up here, we know we can add a list, but we can also open this as Markdown. So what we've actually created is that. We have some metadata at the top, which is telling it that there is a Kanban plugin with a basic view. So it's telling it what it is. Each one of these headings, which is a heading 2, and it's blue because that's my CSS, Each of these heading 2s is a column. Within that, we have the actual ideas themselves. So if we went in as an idea and typed in Affinity Publisher version 2.1 when it's released, that will add that as an idea. We don't have to be in the Kanban board view to actually see that. We've got nothing in serious consideration, but if we were to put in there something under serious consideration, so let's say that is Affinity Designer version 2, that will then appear in serious consideration. So you can edit this without having Obsidian. So if you don't use mobile often, but when you do, you use IA Writer. Obviously, IA Writer is not going to understand the Kanban view, but it is going to understand text. And in essence, all this is text. So if we've got the note to self video in script, though we probably shouldn't do that one. Peter will get too excited. If I say that that one's serious consideration and it's done, that will mark that as done in the Kanban. And then you've got some settings at the bottom that again that's a comment telling it to render this as a Kanban. It's actually an untitled Kanban, so we'll call this videos. Right, now there should be a way to get that back, and I don't think I found a way to get it back. I've got all kinds of views up here, but it doesn't say show it me as a Kanban. So what I tend to do is just open it. There's my video Kanban. And you'll notice that this one has got a tick in it. These two were added when it was in text view, so it wasn't even in the card view. And you can just edit it as text. It's in Obsidian with this plugin installed that it will render it as a Kanban. Other things you can do, I do believe you can move the lists around. Now, I can't record before I've scripted, so the list I had was actually the better way. But the point is you can change these around. If you couldn't do that, you'd have to redesign the whole thing. Or do what we did, which is in there, open as Markdown. If we took the scripting and the content and we cut that, and we went up to before ideas, and we put that in. I'm checking how many of these we've got. 2 of those, so let's make sure that's right. 2 of those, 2 of those. Right, close that, open it up again as a Kanban, and now the scripting is at the beginning. So you can edit this just by editing the text. I don't recommend it. Too much scope for error, but you could if you wanted to. So I know some people don't bother with the sync because on iOS it needs to be iCloud to do it for free, which is a bit of an issue because sometimes it synchronizes and sometimes it doesn't. So if you want to use something like Dropbox, which you were using for a while, weren't you? Mm-hmm. Dropbox sync was absolutely fine, but you can't use it on mobile. But what you can do is open up your Vault on mobile with something like IA Writer, what's some of the others? Byword, anything that can get to Dropbox and see the files, it can edit it, but obviously it can't display it. That's a viable option, to be honest. If you're comfortable with Markdown, it's a viable option not to go for third-party sync or sync from Obsidian. I use it that much. It's worth it for me. But if you just want to be able to add stuff to some notes and you're happy to open the notes without the interface of Obsidian, then that is one way to do it. And stuff like this, the video Kanban or the Kanban plugin, you can actually edit it as long as you're comfortable with Markdown. And that is how I manage little jobs, not major projects. I don't do videos with it. That's in Notion. But for small jobs where I've got like lots of notes that I need to tidy up and things I need to put in a certain place, it's really easy to just do it in there. And that way I've got a portable project management system that, you know, if I'm in the other room on an iPad, I can just open it up and I can see what I'm supposed to be doing and actually get on and do it. I don't want the overhead of having to build a Notion table and all the rest of it, just not needed. I just need to know what stage of the process something is in and then do what I need to do with it and then move it on to the next stage of the process. So that is the Kanban plugin. Now, if you want more than that, so if if you're using Trello and you think that that's enough, then I would stick with that one. But if you want more, if you want to be able to add dates to this and then pivot it into a calendar, there's an option for that. And that's what we're looking at next week. So we got any questions on that before we head off?
One question.
Yeah.
Kim says, I love Kanban and use Trello. Can we add photos to Obsidian as headers?
As headers, I don't think you can in here. You can in the other one. So this one's quite simple. I've never tried to add a picky to it, but you can in the other one because I've seen that done and it looks great. It really does look great. It was one of those things that I was thinking, do I move some of my Notion stuff over? I decided not to. But I can see the day that I would. So I don't think so with this one. You can add detail to it, but I don't think you can have a picture representing it, but you can next week. So I will make sure that adding pickies is something that I do cover next week. Do we have anything else?
No.
Okay. Right, what have we got coming up? Well, we're back next week. So you already know that we're doing the advanced plugin for Obsidian. I've no idea what else we're doing. Who knows? I mustn't tease, must I? I mustn't tease.
No.
Who knows? Who knows? Right, available on demand is everything we do. That includes the on-demand version of the planner pages as well. You will find the on-demand stuff at youtube.com/ElaineGiles. There is an After Hours playlist which has all of the After Hours on it. Oh, by the way, it's turned it into a podcast. YouTube has. It picked up the word podcast and turned it into a podcast. I have no idea of the ramifications of that, but it is bothering me to put in an image that's square. So I don't know the ramifications. I don't know if that means that you could subscribe or something like that, you know, to a specific podcast rather than the channel. I have no idea, but that's what they did. If you are interested in having a look at that, it is macbites.co.uk/after hours playlist. And of course, as ever, we love you guys. If you love us, can you give us a like? Because it really makes a difference and gets the show out to more people. There is also the option to subscribe so you never miss a show. You know, if you're at the gym and things like that. No names mentioned. If you want first dibs on all the stuff I do, you need to go to elainegiles.com/VIP. And if it's the after hours that you are interested in, you need to go to macbites.co.uk/macbites-mail. The other place we hang out is in Slack, where we carry on the conversation. If you are not a member and you want to join, you need to go to macbites.co.uk/join Slack. No cost, it's like Twitter but without the toxicity. If you are already a member, you just need to remember macbites.co.uk/Slack and you'll be able to log in. And that is it for today. So, who's got what? I haven't had any ice cream today. Do you know, Mike, I didn't get any yesterday either.
Oh.
Not that I'm complaining, but why didn't I get any yesterday?
I have no idea.
No, gross oversight on Mike's part, that was. Yes, I intend to make up for it today. I do. So, do we have any other questions?
No.
Right, let's get my contact thing on there. Yay! Right, now I can see the chat. Oh, I'm liking that one with the raised eyebrow of Peter's. Is that like, what was his name? Roger Moore. We met him, didn't we? When he came to Old Trafford.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, very suave he was. He had about 19,000 security guards with him. But yeah, he got within touching distance. It was pre-COVID, so don't panic. What's Tracy got? An iOS shortcut or a text replacement keyboard app that would allow me to append an ISO date to a file name with an abbreviation. I'd have thought a shortcut could do that. The only keyboard app would be Text Expander, and I left them years ago. In fact, I was only trying them out, wasn't I? And all my snippets got lost. And then I got on to help, and there were no help whatsoever. So I know that is one that's available on iOS, but I don't use it. Oh, you're looking to replace Text Expander? Not surprised. No, not that I know of, but I would have thought a shortcut could do it, because I've seen shortcuts do amazing things. So I would have thought a shortcut. I'm no expert in them, so I'll leave that. I'm going to skip that scowling face from Peter. Peter, one day it'll happen, and you'll either be absolutely stunned and grateful, or think, I waited how long for that? Let's see which way that goes. Right, the snippet takes the current date, spits it out, replacing the abbreviation. No, I still think a shortcut's probably the only way to go. I mean, iOS is like a toy at times. I was typing into Obsidian Zettelkasten, and it marked it up as a spelling mistake. So I thought, that's fine. I'll just tap on it and tell it to add it to the dictionary. No chance. No chance. Doesn't do it. So I had to copy the word Zettelkasten. I had to download Pages. I had to open it, paste it in. It flagged it up as a spelling mistake. Tap on it and tell it to add it to the dictionary. And then when I went back to Obsidian, it was quite happy. Life's too short. That's ridiculous. That is totally ridiculous. But it's a toy. iOS is a toy. How many times a week do I say that, Mike? This is what happened, right, this week. This is genuine, this. Right, I'm saying to Mike, I need to work in a different room for longer than I would normally do. And obviously I can't take my iMac with me. And so I said, it's all right, take an iPad. I've got an M1 iPad, for crying out loud. So that should be fine. There were bad words said. There were copious bad words said. By the end of it, I got a blog post with all that was wrong with iOS, where Apple are saying, this is the kit that can replace your computer. You must be kidding. So I got this long list of stuff, to the point that this week I'm looking at my kit and I said it's going to have to be the laptop, which meant I had to buy an extra piece of hardware, a hub, to take 2 drives off this laptop and put them on another machine. So the other machine needed its USB thing extending to take these 2 drives so I could then extricate the laptop and use it, when I could quite happily and would quite happily have used an iPad. But the annoyances, within half an hour, I'd had enough. It was like I could be on my deathbed here, but I am still going to get up and I am still going to go and sit in front of my iMac because it actually works. So now I've extricated the laptop to do that with. But it's little things that are annoying. The stuff that it can do is amazing when you watch the demos. Oh, look, you can do this. You can do open heart surgery and you can fly a plane. Fine, but I can't add something to the dictionary. I have to go in and do it your way. Utterly ridiculous. But that's just me. Right, what else have we got? Kim thinks next week. Fingers crossed then. Oh, jammy. I've overloaded on pizza and chocolate. Really? Really? After the gym? Oh, I've got a friend who's doing the Lent thing. I think what is it now? 8 days? 8 days in, giving up chocolate. Oh, that was a big mistake. I gave up something for Lent years ago, and how grumpy was I? So I swore never to do it again. But there's a lot of things now doing the rounds at church, and they're not saying to give up things like your iPad. Yeah, that's not happening. Don't give up your iPad. Don't give up like chocolate. And then it lists all the things that you could give up. And there are things like being mean to people and having a low tolerance. And I thought, can't really give up a low tolerance for stupidity either, can I? But it was nice. It was a really nice post, like that. Best time to overload on it? No, I do agree with that though. Don't believe in giving up anything if you like it. It just wasn't me. It did make me think, and I did manage the 40 days. I was good. But at the end of it, I thought, I'd learnt a lot about myself. And number one thing was I'm not doing that again. Because it's like, well, I've got an analogy here for Mike. It's like Valentine's Day, isn't it? I'm nice to people 365 days a year. So why do I have to give up something, being nasty or something like that for Lent? Why don't I just behave myself? And then I can do whatever I like. So I suggested that she only gave it up during work hours. I've not heard back. I don't know how that went down. I'll let you know. Oh, poor Peter. By the time he gets to see it, you're too old to use it. No, Peter, it'll be fine. It can't. Every day is a day closer. Shall I give up training for Lent? No, it'll happen. It will. I've told you this. It will. It will happen. And maybe I should have a look at that file today and see if that would be a good file to demo it on. There you go. You see, that's progress. We can move it along to the next Kanban column. There's progress. That's what'll happen. Right. So do we have any more? Oh, hang on, Peter. Monday session with a numbers wheel. Easy to use the cog shape to make the segmented, adjust the setting. Yes, you could have done, but I wanted to demonstrate power duplicate and changing the pivot point and stuff. There's a million different ways. Just depends on what you're doing with it and how the finished thing looks.
There's one from Jammy just above.
Where? Just above what? Hang on. Oh, question. Is it possible to see a bit of Obsidian on iOS and iPad at some point? Yes, that is happening. Not next week. Next week is the project thing, but probably the week after. Peter's really peeved now. I'm predicting things for Jammy 2 weeks in hand. It's the element of surprise, though, Peter. Just think of the complete delirium that would set in. Let's leave it like that. And Graham's overloaded on chocolate. I'm not... Is that possible? Oh, I think we have made ourselves sick, haven't we, at times? Do you remember early doors? I don't know why, but was it me getting into Chester? We had a bottle of champagne. We pretty much necked the whole thing, didn't we? With some jelly babies.
No, it was getting our first season tickets.
Was it? Yeah. Oh, right. It was getting our first season tickets. And somebody wasn't well, were they?
That would have been me.
It was. Overdid it slightly. Got too giddy for himself. Was that the champagne that ended up on my equity and trust book?
I can't remember.
I think we had like a glass of champagne on the coffee table and the equity and trust books next to it. And every time I opened that book for that year, I would just smile broadly as the whole side of it was covered in champagne. Oh, we are so bad. Oh, Peter's don't be grumpy. Don't be grumpy, Peter. It will happen. Okay, in that case, we'll head off. And I might get some ice cream if I behave myself. Fingers crossed. Thought you were teetotal. Oh, this was years ago. This would have been 1992. And it was a big thing. Getting a season ticket at Manchester United, it was a big thing. But that was the last time I drank, I think. And before that, the last time I drank was... I was just 18 and I had been ill at Christmas and I'd sworn off having anything to drink. And my gran wasn't too well either. She goes home and my aunt goes to visit her on Boxing Day morning to find that understatement, she's not well. Luckily, my aunt took her mother-in-law with her, who was a nurse. And they get there, and Gran was in a bad way. And the nurse said to my aunt, you need to get an ambulance. It's a heart attack. But in women, a heart attack is not like clutching your chest and diving on the floor. And she said, it's a heart attack. So she had to go to hospital. Everybody had a drink apart from me. So I decided after that, you can say to yourself, I won't drink and drive, but how do you know what will happen? So I took the pledge at that point. And the only thing I've had since was that champagne. I don't think I've had anything since then, have I? We don't have alcohol in the house. I mean, what's the point? My drinks every now and then, don't you? I drive you to it, apparently. He's not saying a thing. He's grinning broadly, though. Oh, good grief. You were 5 or 6. Oh, now I'm depressed. Yes, it was. It was 1992. Mike and I met in 1991 at the match, as you would imagine, and they literally just put seats in. So Jamie won't remember this far back, but in 1989, there was the Hillsborough disaster. And Mike used to stand in the same paddock as I stood at Old Trafford, but I was at university at the time, so we didn't meet when we were standing. But I did go to that Tottenham match, and I did see you at the Tottenham match, which was May 1991. He was stood where I used to stand, but obviously I'd been at university, so I'd lost my spot. But it was decided no more standing. So they put seats in. And then it was a mad dash for everyone to get the precise seat where they used to stand. And I managed it for a year. Sweet talking the ticket office lady. She was lovely. She gave me the seat I wanted, so she was lovely. Mike, you relocated, didn't you?
I did.
Mike relocated about as far as possible away from me. Mad fool. But that was when we met. And it was 1992 in the April when we went to the cup final, the tin pot, so that we finally got together. So we applied for 2 season tickets, sat next to each other, and we got them. And hence the champagne. That was worth it. That was totally worth it. And it didn't take me bad. It took Mike terrible. It didn't take me bad at all. But no, not touched a drop since. We've had lots to celebrate since, though, haven't we?
Yeah.
But not with alcohol. Definitely not.
And we've had a photo sent to us on Facebook by somebody who's done the tour and saw our seats with the nameplates on them.
Oh, brilliant. We'll have to look at that. Yeah, Tracy says heart attacks are very different for diabetics too, men or women. Well, Gran was diabetic as well. Well, that was a bit weird. They said she was diabetic, and she used to get really grumpy, didn't she? She would say to my mum, "Oh, I can't have carrots, they're too sweet." And then when people bought her diabetic chocolate, she'd be really grumpy that she wasn't having fruit and nut. She was a scream. She really was. But I think she was diabetic as well. Well, the doctor said she was. You know me and doctors, but they said she was. So, yeah, it was all very weird. I don't think I'd have seen these symptoms and thought heart attack straight away, but luckily she was a nurse. And that was back in the day when nurses were nurses and matrons were matrons, and you did as you were told. Ah, those were the days. Anyway, your names are on your seats forever. Yes, Kim. Did that come in with a platinum?
Yeah.
Once you'd had your season ticket, was it 25 years?
25.
25 years, you got a gold season ticket. And then was it 30? It went platinum.
I think so.
And you got your names on your seats. So your names are on your seats forever and ever, amen. Or until some away fans rip them out. And then, of course, they'll have to put them back. But yes.
Or until they knock the stadium down.
Oh, yeah, there's talk of them knocking the stadium down, but I think that's a long way off. And anyway, they'll have to put them back somewhere, wouldn't they? That would actually be interesting with what they've done with the other side. It gets complicated, but yes, we've been there that long. They're building around us now. Do you know what it reminds me of? The plaque on a coffin. Yeah, we've been there that long. But we do. I'll get this picture. See if I can find this picture, Kim. Right, okay then. I am going to say good night from me.
And good night from me.
And we will both see you next time. Stay safe, guys.